Michelle. Okay, so for anybody who's with us last session, just another thank you to Rachel and Effie. Their presentation was great. We're now moving on to a discussion about identifying changes in young people. The presentation is called Safe Students. It is being delivered by Crystal from Grip T Life, and I'll just pass over to Crystal and allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Tinsley. I'm from the St. Louis area, so my logo can be a little bit confusing. The company that I run is called Grip Life, and really it is centered around helping people get a grip on their best life. A lot of this can be surrounded around people who have dealt with a lot of past trauma and helping them find life beyond that. So I really spend a lot of time helping young women as a lifestyle and wellness coach find confidence and self-worth that has been difficult to attain in the past, especially when it relates to trauma. And this topic in particular has been so important to me because I think there's so much missed with changes in behavior when it comes to our youth. So I'm super excited to have this discussion with you guys. So where I want to start, I didn't know, Emma, were you going to be jumping on back and forth, or do you just want me to kind of run with it?
That's completely up to yourself, Crystal. What we were doing is if anybody has any questions, just asking them to pop up a hand or pop them in the chat, and we can forward those on to you, but you can just take it away if you're happy to.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to. And if you can help me with, I'm having to use my mobile app today. So if you can let me know if there is a hand raised, because I am not getting access to seeing that at the moment.
Okay, I'll do.
But okay, thank you. So really where I want to start, this topic is so important to me because as many of us know, when you are discussing trauma or any sort of sexual abuse, things of that sort, for the most part, well over 70% don't like to come forward with that information. And there's so many reasons why, and we'll kind of get into that. But any middle school, high school, college age teen, or any individual for that matter, I've even worked with adults that have had some trauma, and those things can be very, very difficult to discuss. So when it comes to any, yes? Hello?
Crystal, you're good. Don't worry about it. If somebody has a question, they'll just pop on and you'll
Okay.
probably see their face pop up because you can't see people's faces, so we can focus on yours.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. So kind of getting back to this, many reasons why people don't come forward. There's so many different reasons that hold them back. That can be anything from deep shame to worrying about, if I come forward with this topic, how is it going to impact how my peers view me? How is this going to impact the people that love me? And sometimes to that person, it may seem a little bit safer to just keep that inside. And that is definitely when we start to see behavior changes, especially when it comes to, high school age youth. They don't know how to process feelings quite appropriately, and they don't know who to go to. So when we are looking at trauma and you look at sexual abuse, many times, instead of that being an incident, that is taken on as an identity for that child. And that's all they think about. So many signs that I think get overlooked is when you're seeing any sort of withdrawal. Maybe that child is starting to see their grades decline. They've got a lot of anxiety and worry. Maybe they're not sleeping, things like that. Any self-harming behavior, those are things that you want to keep an eye out for, because they're overlooked oftentimes for, they're being a difficult teenager. And a lot of times that's just not the case. And that's how these things get missed. taking action is wildly important. And I think that is where educators, parents, parents of friends, they don't know how to come forward and ask those questions. It's uncomfortable. They don't want to make that child uncomfortable. They don't want to make them feel like they're asking an accusatory question and it may not even be a possibility. But it is so important to build a structure with educators, with parents, and to talk about these things so that we are brave enough to ask and that it isn't looked down upon as something that's intrusive. My personal story and how I got into lifestyle and wellness coaching is from recovering from many years of trauma. So I began my sophomore year of high school, was drugged and taken advantage of. Now, this person wasn't someone that was in high school with me. It was an adult. And at that time, I was coming from a very troubled home, which is most of the time, many kids that are having these struggles do come from troubled homes. And they may be hanging out with peers that they're not as familiar with. They don't know the history, and things do tend to happen. And when it came to myself and my family started having difficulties, I withdrew from the normal friend groups that I was around. I hung out with people who I didn't know as well, and they kind of came from a troubled background, and that's how I found myself in that situation. So, as a young teen, I'm scared. I'm afraid to tell anyone because who do you tell? My family's already having trouble, so am I going to burden them with my issues? Maybe this was my fault, and maybe I shouldn't have been at this place at this time, or I was drinking alcohol at a young age, and all of those things I put on myself and blamed myself for it. So nobody knew. I didn't tell any of my friends or any of my family. There were a couple of friends who knew, and I did what many survivors do, and they stifle it. They stuff it down. They don't come forward, especially when you come from a small town or a small community, because what if they don't believe you? Small towns, you usually know the person who, committed the act against you. Their family, their friends. So if you do come forward, what is that going to do? And that is, in my case, that's exactly what happened. It was easier for me to stuff that down. So what had happened is, and this is where our educators, if we've got, any online here, it's so important because you may notice that children are withdrawing. Maybe their grades are dropping. Maybe they're sad. Maybe, cutting can be a thing. And all of these things that are commonly talked about. But the one thing that I don't hear talked about often enough is maybe some of our bullies. So in my case, back then, I was scared. Had so much going on inside, so much turmoil, and I was on the defense. And I was actually one of the kids that was on the other end of the spectrum. And I was kicked out of school so many times. My grades did suffer because of that. But I was the kid getting kicked out for fighting. I was the kid that was always on guard and kind of hateful. And those are harder for us as adults and for educators and parents to take, because those are often behaviors that are taken on as a difficult teen behavior. She's just being hateful, ungrateful child, this, that, and the other. That's when it becomes so important for us to really sit down and start to try to unpack that with our children. What is going on? Why are you so angry? And those things are not going to come out in the first conversation. It's just not going to, but it's so important for us to continue giving that child attention and not always just punishing them for that bad behavior. What does that bad behavior mean? Because the more that we attention and that we give that child, we're giving them an opportunity to let go of some of that anger and hopefully come forward and find a way to heal. So my journey led me till I was probably in my, I would say around 27 by the time I got the help that I needed. I spent a lot of my life, massive anxiety, trauma. I relived the scenario so many times in my head. And that's who I was. That one event that happened was the identity that I took on for years. And, you know, if you fall, you break a leg, anything of that sort, you're going to heal. It's going to be an incident. It'll be something that you tell someone about. Yeah, it was traumatic. It really hurt really bad. That's not who I am, you know? So when we have something like this happen to us, it is an incident. You know, we survived that incident. We're past that. And helping children find their identity and who they are again is so important. So they tend to withdraw from that. And the whole reason I started Grip Life is specifically because I see so many adults. I coach a lot of adults now.
Alfred.
And what's that? Was that a question?
Fine, keep going. No, you're fine. Keep going.
Okay. So as an adult now, I spend a lot of my time coaching adults. I coach a lot of adults. I coach a lot of college age girls right now. My focus is mainly on women, and it's centered around keeping them active, fitness and nutrition, sleep, hydration. And it's so important for our youth also, not just adults. Many of these adults that I am coaching that have had trauma in the past have carried it for so many years that if we are doing our part as adults and paying attention to these signs and asking and prompting our children to talk to us, we're going to have a better future. We're going to have people that go into adulthood and they're able to become parents themselves and parent better and be more aware. And I know that this topic isn't talked about enough with high school, middle-aged, and college students, because we need to make it, it's so important that we make it something that isn't shameful to talk about. And, you know, I would love to hear from some of you, you know, some of the thoughts that you have on this and any questions. Am I seeing?
So we are getting some questions. So let me go ahead and read one of those to you. Alex asked, what resources would you like to see more available to teens dealing with trauma? Great question, Alex.
The more resources that I would love to see available is, I think sometimes our school counselors get loaded down. I think that possibly adding some additional resources and material. I know that currently there's not a lot of information on that. So if you go to a school counselor, I'm very aware of a couple situations in my area where they're not sure what to do with it and they refer it out. And you're going to need to see this counselor. It's almost paralyzing. They almost act like they're not sure what to do with it. And you better believe that child feels that. And you want to know that if you're coming to that person, that they are equipped to handle that kind of information. And so I would really like to see more training with our counselors and educators on this topic. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm starting to see.
Can you see the chat all right, Crystal, or is it easier if I read out some questions that I'm getting coming through?
You should go ahead and
I
read
see
them.
what.
Okay, so I've got one here. Hi, Crystal. I'm a case manager for human trafficking. I work with youth aged 10 to 18. How do I engage with the school systems to interact with these topics?
I think interacting with the school systems, I think it's going to be very different in a lot of areas. You're hearing more on trafficking. That topic is pretty prevalent right now with everything that we've got going on in the media. And I truly believe that we need to be out, just like we're sales reps. I think we need to be entering these schools and providing material and talking about this. I think there's a little bit of pushback on the topic personally. And I really think that we just need to be a little bit relentless about getting in, talking to your principals, talking to your superintendents, getting more material to our educators so that they can make suggestions to, what do we look for? Those are things that I think people need to be very cognizant, and I don't know that we are at this time. I think I'm figuring out these.
Wonderful. So I have a question while we see they are starting to populate in. And I want to encourage everybody to go ahead, and if you do have a question, just turn your screen on and you'll pop up, and Crystal will be able to see you. Crystal, for young people, what kind of resources or data do you think that they should take to their principals as if they are those salespeople getting out there selling this concept and selling this idea? What information should they prepare or arm themselves with when they approach their administration?
I think taking the time to learn the statistics, especially locally. So I am from the St. Louis area. And personally, I remember being very shocked with the statistics of how much trafficking comes through this area. And I think every area is going to differ a little bit, but it gets really, really personal when you're able to come and provide and say, did you know that this is going on in this area? This could affect our families and our students. And people are unaware. And truthfully, they want to be a little bit oblivious to this because it's hard to talk about, right? It's hard to look at. So providing those statistics, providing material on what it actually is, and reminding people that just because this hasn't happened to you or anyone that you know directly yet, it's happening. And seeing our youth kind of get passionate about that, I think would probably start to loosen up the whole stigma around mental health, trafficking, sexual abuse. The stigma needs to be removed, and it's only going to be removed by people talking about it comfortably and providing statistics.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Got a couple more questions coming in here now. So someone is asking, as a college student at a large university with a very small Title X office that has a high volume of cases and not necessarily enough counselling resources at their fingertips, where should I turn to for support if I may need it? Is there anything I can do to support survivors on this large campus?
Absolutely. I think, hold on one second. You kind of went off my screen here. So having such a large campus, and if I heard that whole question correctly, what it was asking is how can she get more involved and bring more awareness on that campus?
Yeah, exactly. What kind of resources are there outside of the campus office, I think?
Well, I think that's where we start to get into a little trouble. Are we only utilizing? So it comes into being a little bit resourceful. So what you guys are doing today with the Safe Bay and the summit. So getting more involved on social media locally, what's going on in my area that I can maybe connect to and share and bring that to my campus. Because when we're only utilizing the resources given to us, which maybe with the college, with that university in particular, that's not their most, some of them may have more initiative than the others, but that's not their number one priority. And if it's something that you're very passionate about and you are wanting to make a difference and you are wanting to get your campus on board with this, so what do I look around locally that really supports what I want to talk about? How do I get involved? How do I bring that here? Do I share that to my social media? Do I maybe start speaking to people on my campus about it in small groups? Because you will be very, very surprised how many people probably very close to you who maybe haven't even spoke on their trauma, or someone they know that has gone through something. And for instance, this wasn't at a university, but a couple of years ago, I held a speaking engagement and was just kind of talking about my story and trauma and why fitness and nutrition and mental fitness in particular was so important. And a gentleman that I had worked with for 6 years bolted out of there, had tears in his eyes, told me he would have to talk to me later. And he came to me the next day and told me you'd be so surprised how much that helped me. He had a special needs daughter who he was taking to care each day when he was working, and she found out that she had been assaulted many times. And she wasn't in a position that she could speak for herself very well. So there was behavior changes and things coming out. So for him in particular, he didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't know where to go or who to talk to. So bringing that awareness to people. So I think that as individuals is how we make the biggest difference. So individuals started Safe Bay, right? We all know that I think my awareness of Safe Bay definitely came after the Netflix documentary and things of that sort. But as individuals, we are building that community one by one. And I think that's probably the most important part. Obviously, if you can get the extra resources from your campus and you've got somebody on board that's with you, great. But definitely going to be something that if you're passionate about it, like, bring it.
That's great. There's some really good questions coming in now. Somebody has asked, should we be hosting events or going to places where young people hang out to provide them information about resources we know of? How do we engage with teens and bring them in?
I think that as a teen, speaking to other teens, absolutely. I think you probably have more influence than we do as adults. Teens tend to withdraw from adults, and you don't want to get in trouble. There's so many dynamics that go into it. Sometimes our peers when we're teens are a little bit safer, so if you are a teen who is passionate about this topic and you want to start bringing that to your schools, or maybe there's a small community here outside of St. Louis where it's pretty close knit, but absolutely having a speaking engagement there. Or, many of us who are on this call have probably either experienced something ourselves, or we may possibly know one, two, hopefully not more than that, who have dealt with the same thing. So when we start talking about it, just like the college campus, you start bringing it to other people, they'll speak up. And maybe if they don't that very first time, maybe you will give them enough confidence to open up to someone else they're a little more comfortable with. But I think across the board, you are making people feel like it's okay to talk about. And that's the biggest problem today, is this isn't okay to talk about. And we need to make it to where it's something that is okay to talk about, for sure, because it's happening everywhere.
A question now from an educator. So what do you do as an educator when your counsellors and administration tell you that cases of students reporting have already been handled by child services, but it's still affecting the students' attendance and they're withdrawing from the school environment?
So that one, that's an excellent question. Thank you. That's difficult because that again puts us in a situation where I really believe things are passed off. So we're going to turn this in, child protective services. We're going to have them move in on it. That's not removing the child from the environment in most cases. So the abuse can continue. And let's say that it's handled and it's not still continuing. We still have a child that's dealing with devastating effects. For instance, hauling all the way back, I'm 41 years old. So it's been a while for me. But at that point in time, mine wasn't a repeated incident. It was a one-time incident, but it's something that I carried so heavily. So as an educator, watching a child who is struggling, fighting, getting into fights, sleeping in class, just changing behavior as far as maybe they're dressing differently and hanging around different kids. You notice it, something's wrong. The school's telling you, hey, we handled it, we reported it. I think just as a human, it's such a huge deal to let them know you're there. Hey, I'm here to talk. Sometimes they don't want you to do anything in that immediate moment. They just need someone to hear them and to talk to them and to let them know that they are okay, that they're not different. And when you get the confidence and trust of a child like that, moving forward, you may actually find out a whole lot more that might help that child's case. And I would be relentless about it. I think even if the school has passed it off and given up on it, I would continue to ask, continue to push, continue to look for resources for that child in particular. But I think the first and foremost, the most important is trying to be a friend for that child to go to.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, definitely.
We just got a really great comment from someone that said one of our local colleges actually partnered with a local DVSA agency to contract a sexual assault victims advocate for the campus. So far, it has been a useful resource for the student body. If you were to suggest to young people how to reach out to those type of local organizations, what advice might you give them to really start that ball moving?
To bring them onto the campus?
Yes, absolutely.
Find the person in your district, or say you're at a college or you're at a high school, you find someone that is with you in that same mindset. So they believe something needs to be done. They're a little bit passionate on the topic. Find the resource at whatever's local to you, that program, because that is excellent. That is so amazing that they have a way to funnel those children or college age students in a direction that these people are very equipped on this topic. Sorry about that. Are you guys still there? You popped off there. So finding an organization locally like that and trying to partner, you have to be your own advocate again. You have to go on campus. You've got to talk to everyone who's passionate about it, agrees with you. I think by all means, starting with counseling departments, things of that sort. And really, it's kind of like, it's just like everything else. So if you're going to talk to your students as well, get them passionate about it and get it to where it's something that is going to be more accepted by the university. I feel like this answer is not really good for you. I feel like I could be elaborating a little bit better, but finding out as much as you can about that organization, finding the person that's going to represent them as best as possible, bringing them on campus, having them speak to someone, set up a meeting. If meetings are declined, keep asking. If they're still being declined, go to the student body. You know, you've got to look for so many different avenues in. And then once you're in, I really think that that sort of thing really starts to take off, because, you know, kids want to care about other kids. And even though there are going to be those ones that don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it, there's a lot of kids out there that are looking for every opportunity to help.
Just to touch on, it kind of ties into what you've just been talking about, Crystal. Somebody in the chat has been talking about the kind of importance of student organisations and peer education programmes, and how those can be a kind of great first point of call. We actually have something at my university here in Scotland where it's an association of students, and it's kind of aimed at education and awareness. And I think things like that can be really important in a setting of young people, because like you say, you tend to trust young people rather than approaching an adult.
Oh, absolutely. It's wild. I mean, even going back to my childhood and some of the people that I've worked with as adults that struggled with an incident or multiple incidents that happened to them their entire lives, when you really start to unpack that, the people that they told most often are friends. They're most often peers. And so a lot of that shame comes from worrying about the judgment, you know, someone who wasn't there, because there's usually not someone there, getting them to believe you. So there's just so much doubt. You get someone your age that just wants to listen. They don't necessarily want to go prosecute somebody, or, you know, that's the fear, I think, where children don't want to open up to an adult. What if I tell my dad, which was my fear, you know, back when I was a child, they were going through a divorce, they were fighting, it was very hostile environment. And I'm like, am I going to tell my dad he's going to go kill this person? And then that's going to start another spiral of events that I don't want. So I'm going to take it. And so that's so often what happens. So when you do have these peer groups and you've got, you know, just these student bodies that believe in something, kids start to notice those things. They notice them quicker than probably the adults do. And it makes children more comfortable to just say, hey, yeah, me too. Or, yeah, I knew someone. They just want someone to sit with them and just want someone to listen. That's how it starts. Having someone feel comfortable to even admit what happened is such a huge step. So
Yeah,
that's huge.
we've just had another question come in here from somebody who works at a domestic violence agency. They work primarily with high schoolers doing prevention work, and have had some resistance in general because they are in quite a conservative county. They've been totally denied now at some levels because the schools are worried that students will be triggered getting the information, especially while distance learning. Do you have any suggestions on how to help with buy-in with the schools?
So, and specifically with COVID, and a lot of people are virtual. Is that what the question's asking?
Yeah, I think it's
They're
more.
worried about triggering someone?
Yeah, I think it's more about the triggering, but they've kind of said that the county has commented on the fact that while doing distance learning, it's kind of an additional trigger for young people who are already struggling.
Right. I think that's always going to be a huge struggle on this topic. And I think that's why we're still dealing with it being so much progress can be made in this area still for those reasons. I know that myself, my personal story, growing up very conservative, very small town, farm community, that's just not something that you talk about. And obviously different times. So when you're looking at, a lot of us are on, you know, our Zoom calls, the kids are at home, they're worried about, you know, triggering people, or that again is afraid to poke the bear. So I think that's where we need to just push and be so relentless. And I don't think in some instances it's a bad idea to try to build a community in that community. Because usually those types of areas, it's the same old, there's not a lot of change. there's resistance to change. So trying to form a small community that is, again, bringing it to social media is huge right now. So I think, you focus more on those small groups. You try to bring it to the community that way. You try to enter in maybe through the back door where we're talking to teens and parents on social media in our area. We're getting involved with small business owners. Guaranteed there is someone in that area whose family member, friend, somebody they know, maybe their own kid has had an experience with that. And as long as we're pretending it doesn't happen, that resistance is going to continue. It only takes one person to start coming forward to say, hey, this happened to me, this happened to my child's friend. Those communities, they will get angry. They'll start to want to back those children up, but we have to bring awareness to that problem. And I think in those more conservative communities, we tend to deny that it is even a thing. They want to err on the side of, well, if it's a girl, she shouldn't have worn that. She's promiscuous. She's this, she's that. There's just so many stigmas that come along with it. And it's easier to just shove down and ignore the topic altogether and pretend like the world's sunshine and rainbows when it's not. So I feel like it's a vague answer to that question because it's a great question, but we will meet resistance on this topic on every level until this is not an issue anymore. And we've got a long road ahead. So being loud about it, and I really think diving into, coming in the back door with the educators, maybe the administration is not on board, maybe your principal and the staff members, but maybe you get a teacher who's kind of on board, maybe they start talking to a couple students, maybe they get another teacher on board. It really is just finding every avenue that you can and utilizing social media and being as loud about this topic as we can be, but in a non-abrasive manner. I think being abrasive about this can sometimes turn people off on the topic altogether, where it seems extreme. And I think that's just my own personal opinions. I think that's sometimes where it gets lost because it's a wildly passionate topic. It's easy to want to get in everyone's face about it and scream about it and talk about why it's so important. But sometimes it's the more subtle, these are the statistics, this is a case in our area. Did you know this is going on in our community? Some of that, there's going to be a time and a place for both, I think, but making it something that people aren't running away from so much is important. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. If anybody has got anything they want to pitch in over mic, I know we're kind of speaking back and forward here, but please don't worry about interrupting, just jump straight in. Somebody has just commented about, in reference to the current topic, could it be useful for the domestic violence agency to work with the school counsellor if there is one? This way they can provide support for students after providing them with potentially triggering information. That way they're not just left triggered and alone.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Any alliance that you can get, by all means, I think, why wouldn't we, right? So I think that's huge. So if you can get that alliance, power to you, do it. You make progress in that area. I think you're going to start impacting the community surrounding that particular community, because it does spread. So yes, 100%. Anything that you can get aligned with the counselor, the staff, the teachers, any of that is very important. And I know we're living in a time now where we're not all together and we're on these meetings and things like that, but there are Zoom calls like this that educators can provide. And eventually we are going to open back up. And I think those speaking engagements live and in front of these students is a big deal too, because again, if it happens to someone and it's not a topic that's talked about, they think they're the only one. And I think it's our job to bring so much more awareness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As we start to come to the close of this session, I just wanted to know, where do you see the future, or where do you see the possibility of the future in creating safer spaces for young people?
I think it's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that one. I do think that we're going to see more student alliances. I think we are going to see communities that provide a place for children to go. I think the more that we talk on this topic, resources are going to be readily available. So I know at this point in time, any of us on this call or any of us who have children, if something happened to them right now and they wanted to go for help, a lot of us would wonder what would happen. Like, where would they refer them to? Who are they going to talk to? What's that going to look like? So I think having strategic plans for this, having schools set up to in a way that, yes, absolutely, we have this resource for you. And I also think no tolerance. I think we need to have structures in place where when a topic like that does arise, we really are pushing back against how we approach that, because now I think it's a lot more of a, let's stuff this down. It's a he said, she said, then the victim is usually traumatized again, going back over that subject. So in the future, I really, really think that we're going to see communities speaking more about this, having alliances, what Safe Bay is doing. I think you're honestly at the front of a huge deal right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And as I mentioned, we are coming to a close. So I just wanted to say, Hannah, was there a comment or a question that you had?
Yeah, my only comment was that I definitely, one thing that attracted me to Safe Bay, and you know, becoming a part of it, is I do think it's so important for like the peer-on-peer support, because I think, you know, teens or young people in general feel maybe isolated, you know, in their situation. So I think it's important to have their peers there, to, like you guys said, like, I'm not alone in this. And I think having that awareness gives someone like a stepping off point to, you know, talk about their experience. So, you know, I think that's the only, key factor in it, is to have kind of that peer on peer collaboration.
Absolutely. I
Thank
think
you so
I
much,
agree with
Hannah.
you 100%.
Thank you for
Liza.
your presentation.
Liza, did you have a comment or a question? We can't hear you, Liza.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right.
Hi.
My Zoom is in the speaker, so I can hear everything. But I wanted to know more about how you train other girls who like might be my age or in college to like heal others who need the healing, or even how to heal themselves too.
Well, that's where it all starts. So that's a great question. A lot of times as someone who's come from trauma, we want to help others so bad. And that comes from a great place for sure. We know what that pain feels like. We don't want anyone else to feel that way either. But the work on ourselves first is first and foremost the most important. I can tell you with my journey, I started off like that. I found I was on a pretty dark path, you know, with depression and things of that sort. When I came out of it, a lot of that was based on fitness and nutrition and becoming more active and actually loving myself just a little bit. And then that started, and it was a little bit more self-care, and I started on personal development, and it started working. And then I was more readily available to help other people, because even though I had that urge and I just wanted to help so bad, sometimes I was really not a good listener, because I just wanted to tell my story. And sometimes that's not what someone else who's dealing with a lot of trauma needs. They just need someone who can kick back, listen, and say, yeah, I know how you feel. And so as long as we're doing that self-work, we're taking care of ourselves. And that 100% is getting good sleep, drinking water, staying active, whatever that is. It could be walking, it could be lifting weights, whatever. And nutrition, our gut health. And those are the topics that I speak on very heavily, because when we get those things in line, we naturally start to care for ourselves better. We start to feel better. Then we're in a better space to help other people.
I actually love that, because I think nowadays when it comes to self-care, it's been so luxuriated in the media. So you like saying it's just as simple as brushing your teeth and drinking water. That's very meaningful.
Yeah, it's a great question. Some people don't know where to start. Just getting out of bed sometimes when you're in that dark place is so incredibly difficult. You know, put on your shoes and go for a walk. Just go sit outside, let the sun hit you a little bit. And it's just those little things, you know, tell yourself once a day, I'm going to do something for myself. And it will start to build. It's when we withdraw and we don't allow ourselves those things that make us feel good because we don't think we deserve it, that downward spiral happens. And also, it's a dangerous place to be also. So if you are in a place where you're hurting and you want to help someone else who's hurting, not knowing how to draw those boundaries to divide your pain from their pain can also weigh you down and make it worse. And it can make your pain worse. So that's why I really just self-care, you know, doing all those little things to make yourself happy, loving yourself again. That'll start a whole new path for you to be wonderful and possibly save someone else's life.
Thank you so much. This entire presentation has been so meaningful to all of us. I hope I think everybody did leave with something new, or just leave with information and statistics that we need to know to encourage that and promote like that healing that we need. Is there anything else you want to say before we have to go to the next presentation, and let us know where we can find you, your social medias, all that?
Yeah, my social media, you can find me I'm most active on Instagram, just Crystal Tinsley. And I've also got Gripped Life, GRIPTLIFE. My website it's up, but it's back under construction. Whoop, I lost you there for a second. And I'm very active on social media, so reach out. I can talk all day long on fitness and nutrition too, if those are things you need help with, and trauma for sure. Private message, don't pop that in the comments anywhere, but I try to keep a safe space for everybody. But yeah, I would love to see you guys on there. You've been great, and I'm super excited that I wanted to keep it a little interactive, so it's usually more fun that way. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. So now
you guys have been wonderful.
Thank you so much, for real. Everybody follow her, please, on Instagram. And she got her website back up, so please check that out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
All right. And her Instagram, we did drop into the chat. So make sure you follow her, like Liza said, and we are going to get started right at 2:00. So now we want to invite you to take a break, go get something to drink if you need a bite to eat, stretch your legs and your arms or your eyes or whatever the case may be. Check your social media and make sure you go and follow Crystal on Instagram. We will be back and starting right at 2:00. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.